政府正在把我们的未来抵押给军火商。就在刚刚，华人区炸锅了，澳洲金融界大动荡，四大银行竟然在下一盘大棋。2025年4月22日，在 Chatswood 惊天逆转，法律界 Andy Schmulowy 发表了重磅消息，令全场沸腾。他说，银行绑架经济的时代必须结束，澳洲金融界正在上演惊天阴谋，四大银行联手策划无现金陷阱，要把所有澳洲人逼上绝路，这可不是危言耸听啊！金融斗士安迪教授怒发冲冠，我要用球棍敲醒这些贪婪的银行家。看到太多人被银行压榨，为了全民的权利，他从不在意是否得罪权贵。这位硬核教授放话要单挑整个金融体系。原来这支队伍卧虎藏龙啊！30多年党龄的澳洲公民党传奇战士 Robert Barwick 亲自坐镇，痛心疾首指出 ，AUKUS 就是出卖澳洲主权的卖身契。政坛第一位华人议员和沈慧霞博士到来支持，媒体集体破防，只为让人民听见真相。华人围观群众纷纷表示，第一次听到这么敢说的政党。有人激动表示，这才是我要的澳洲声音。本次活动由元宇宙咨询全程操刀，从策划到执行堪称完美。他们用专业让人民的声音被听见，许多华人当场加入讨论。澳洲首任驻华副大使 John Lander 罕见发声，现场重建澳洲人民当家的标语下，我们不要战争，要的是和平。我们要的是医院，不是战舰，把政府归还给人民。澳大利亚必须摆脱对美国的过度依赖，记住，沉默就等于认输。现在不发声，以后可能连发声的机会都没有了。转发这条消息，让更多人知道真相。
Hey, Andy. Nice to meet you.
And you.
Yeah, so could you please... Ni hao. Yeah, a very nice pronunciation.
Thank you.
Can you just give us like a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. I'm an associate professor in the law school at the University of Wollongong. And over the last 2 years, I've been called and invited to contribute to probably somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen parliamentary inquiries. And whenever I contribute to those parliamentary inquiries, whenever I give testimony, whenever I give evidence to those parliamentary inquiries, they adopt my recommendations in full. And they adopt my recommendations because I bring hard research, I bring comparative international research, I bring research that brings the best international solutions to the problems we're facing. And then, when those recommendations are made by those parliamentary inquiries, they're ignored. They're ignored by the government, whether the government is the Liberal Party or whether the government is the Labor Party. Those recommendations are ignored because our government is too scared to do anything that will upset Coles and Woolworths, Qantas, Commonwealth Bank, NAB, ANZ, Westpac, PwC, KPMG, Ernst & Young, Deloitte. Those companies rule our government. Those companies take power away from the people of Australia. We think we live in a democracy. We think we live in a democracy because we get the chance to vote, and we do vote, but when we vote, it doesn't mean anything because we don't get to tell the government what policies it must implement. Those companies do. I'm sick of that. Members of the Chinese community who are small business owners. Small business in this country is suffering. It's suffering because our big four banks are the most profitable banks in the world. Where does that money come from? It doesn't come from factories where they make things. It doesn't come from intellectual property where they design things. It doesn't come from anything they invent. It comes from them extracting money from businesses that actually make things. And they are now the most profitable banks in the world, and they are killing small businesses. And when small businesses go and seek a loan, small business people have to put their house up as collateral. They have to bet their house on whether the business will use the loan profitably. Banks don't have to do that. And the banks charge interest in order to offset the risk.
But where's the risk? There's no risk because they're taking people's houses as collateral. Commonwealth Bank made $5 billion profit not last year. They made $5 billion profit in the first half of last year. This is squeezing small businesses dry. And we don't have enough competition in our banking industry. The Productivity Commission said in 2019, our banks are a cozy four-bank oligopoly. And our bank regulator prevents any new banks from being registered. What we need is people in government who will say to the bank regulator, you will be required to create competition in our banking industry through granting licenses. If you don't, we will sack the people in the bank regulator and we will hire new people. And we need an ACCC that has the power to break up those four banks, to say to them, your merchant banking and your commercial banking and your retail banking divisions, you have to split them because you've become too big and too powerful.
So in terms
I've travelled to China many times.
Yeah, and in terms of maybe talk about this independent foreign policy that we should have, comparing with the conventional one that we have been already have it for so many years.
You know, I'm not one of these people who likes to talk about things that I'm not an expert in. And my expertise is financial regulation, but I will say this.
Yeah.
Henry Kissinger once said, to be America's enemy is dangerous. To be America's friend is fatal.
Very good, thank you.
So Robert, could you please just the party and the difference, why it's different from the other parties?
We are the Australian Citizens Party. We're not a modern new party. We've been going for 37 years. We don't get spoken about much, partly because we are a genuine threat to the power of the two major parties, because we believe that Parliament should serve the citizens and not the big, powerful interests from corporations, etc., the ones who actually benefit from the way the economy works at the moment. We also believe that the government should only represent the interests of the Australian people and not foreign powers. And we feel that that's what's happening in Australia when it comes to our foreign policy. And so we are being hostile to our countries, to the countries that are our friends and our best trading partners, so we can go along with the United States. And that's what sets us apart from the other parties, because we're prepared to be very outspoken on those issues. And if we were in Parliament, we would continue to be outspoken, but more effectively.
Thank you very much, Robert, for sharing the core value of the party. So based on the core value, what type of policies actually the party is right now advocating?
Well, we have two kinds of policies. One is we want the economy to work better for the people, and we call that economic sovereignty. And our principal policy is for a public bank. We want the government to start its own bank again. The government did have a bank for 84 years. Now only private banks are in Australia, and they make big profits, and it's at the expense of their customers. It's at the expense of the Australian people. So while we are suffering from a cost of living crisis, the banks are making enormous profits at our expense. And if we bring back a government bank, then economic policy can be accountable to the people again, and the government can use the power of banking to benefit people. Our other main principal policy is for an independent foreign policy. This event today is about cancelling the AUKUS partnership and submarines contract, which is not in Australia's interest at all. It's just something that's going to make a lot of money from the United States and the United Kingdom and make our region more dangerous. And we believe that if Australia's foreign policy was independent, we would be prioritising things like our relationship with China, which is our biggest and best trading partner, and working to improve that rather than spending $368 billion on submarines that are going to be used to be hostile towards China.
So right now we see this kind of growing enormous pressure about cost of living. So what type of policy you're actually advocating?
The public bank policy, which we want as a postal bank operating in post offices, will have a big impact on that, because it'll break the power of the banks, and the banks are the ones that are driving up the cost of living, principally through the cost of housing. Housing is the biggest component of the cost of living in Australia, and the reason it's so expensive is because the banks make so much money out of it, and every time the government talks about addressing the problem, they just make it easier for the banks to make more money out of it. So by breaking the power of the banks, we can actually start to make housing affordable again. But then there's other areas where we've got to break corporate power as well. There's only 2 supermarkets in Australia, big supermarkets, and they are profiting while pushing up the prices of everything. We have to break their power. We actually have to break the supermarkets up and make, instead of having 2, we should have 6 or 7 supermarkets that actually compete with each other. We have a cartel that controls gas, and that drives up the cost of electricity. And we shouldn't have that. The government should break the power of that cartel, and this is our gas. We're the biggest gas exporter in the world. Australia should be paying the cheapest for gas in the world instead of the most expensive. So we need to break their power as well. And if you do those sort of things, you will bring down the costs that people are paying for their fixed costs of living and make life easier for all Australians.
Hey Peter,
Hi.
thanks for taking the interview. Can you just give us a brief introduction about yourself and let us know why we should choose this party instead of the other parties? What is the actual differences among them?
Well, I don't think the other parties are answering the basic problems that people have got. They've got no solutions. They're not really addressing the problems confronting the Australian people. And I feel that the Australian Citizens Party, I got wiped out completely. I had a business called Host the Murder, and in 24 hours I lost everything. I had a job one day with something like 10 months of bookings, and the next day I was broke. I had nothing. So I started looking at different political solutions, and the Labor Party had nothing to offer, the Liberal Party had no explanation. And when I started to look at the Australian Citizens Party, it used to make more sense. They're more human, more caring, and had solutions that made sense to me, just common sense. Like, why do we do a thing like join AUKUS and buy all these submarines that we're not going to get for 9 years, and we have to pay for them, they're going to cost us a fortune, and they'll be maybe outdated by the time we get them. That doesn't make common sense to me. So things like that, the need for a national Australian bank, a bank that serves the people and works in the interest of the people, makes more sense to me than all the private banks which are just ripping off everybody. In a national banking system would provide enough money to build a fast-speed train, say from Melbourne to Darwin, and we could export all our food that we could produce if we developed it in northern New South Wales and southern Queensland. We could get all that food up to Darwin and out to the rest of the world and make good money and serve a purpose for the world. We could do it, but we need a massive infrastructure, and the present banks are out to make money out of us, not to serve the people. We need a bank that will serve the people. And a national banking system, like a post office banking system, would do that.
Yeah, I've heard about that post-bank
Yeah,
idea this morning as well.
To me to do that,
So
we
how
had
about
one.
the other one that they mentioned about, like, we should have independent foreign policy, so
Yeah.
comparing with the conventional ones that you used to have for so many years?
Yeah.
What are those,
Well, when we had a national banking system, we were able to build the Commonwealth, it was called the Commonwealth Bank, and it was a bank belonging to the people, working for the people, and we were able to build the Kosciuszko Dam. Now, when we built the Kosciuszko Dam, we had to pay for labour to come out to Australia to build it. So it created a lot of work for people. A national banking system created the Kosciuszko Dam. We made all the money from that. That belonged to the people. Then we built the Sydney Harbour Bridge. That belonged to the people. We made money from that. Then, from the money from that, we were able to build the Sydney Underground Railway. Made more money from that. Next step was to dam the rivers up north and southern Queensland. We wouldn't have these floods. We could have controlled the water a lot better. And we could have irrigated the whole of southeast Queensland, irrigated northern New South Wales, and everyone would have been better off for it. But we didn't get the money. We haven't got the money to do that because we haven't got a national banking system. We haven't got a banking system that serves the people. It works in the interest of the people.
Could you please just give us like a brief introduction of yourself? And is this the first time for you to run for the office?
So my name is Aisha Nancy Novakovich, and I'm the lead Senate candidate for Western Australia. Today we're here at the Senate launch campaign and fundraiser for Dr. Andy Schmulowy. So I'm here to support because we work as a team, and it's really important that people know A, about the Citizens Party, and B, who Dr. Andy is and what he's fighting for. Because when people come to understand those two things, for sure they're going to be instant believers and get behind him. We need him in the Senate. This is absolutely the first time I have ever run for political office. It was not part of the plan, but I think for most people it probably isn't. But here I am.
And Aisha, could you please just give us like a brief introduction about the actual differences between this ACP party and other parties?
Okay, so firstly, the Australian Citizens Party has two main policies. The first is fighting for economic sovereignty, which means that as a nation, we are held hostage by a very corrupt and self-serving banking industry, which really doesn't serve our national interests, okay? And that would be resolved by establishing a national public bank. That would literally resolve the cost of living crisis and the housing crisis. Why is that? Because instead of relying on high taxation, our savings in this national bank would be leveraged as capital and equity to then invest in all of these infrastructure works and projects. So that's number one. Number two is to have national sovereignty. So that means having an independent foreign policy that doesn't blindly follow the US and the UK into their endless wars, which serve their national interests to the detriment of our national interests. So for example, we promote the cancelling of AUKUS, okay? This party is different for many, many reasons. So I used to be a Labor supporter, which shouldn't surprise a lot of people, especially when you come from a multicultural background. I'm half Indonesian, half Yugoslav. Being an Asian woman, you come to this country and you normally choose between Liberal and Labor. And I know a lot of us migrants, we say we're going to vote for Labor. But unfortunately, Labor is very good at marketing to us without really caring about us. And they have introduced a lot of laws that actually curtail our rights. I was very disappointed in 2011 when they introduced this very inhumane refugee policy. I think that was a turning point for me when I started to see through their lies. And then trying to pass, well, they actually succeeded in passing legislation, like with the recent hate crimes legislation, all of those amendments, which basically make it a criminal offence to criticise, well, the state of Israel. One thing about Labor that I did not appreciate is they have been pro-genocide. They will say they're not, but in actual fact they provided cover for the war crimes committed by Israel against the Gazans and the Palestinians. So there are lots of reasons why I moved away from Labor. I was in the political wilderness, didn't know where to go, until really it was by accident that I was introduced to this political party. And after doing my research and meeting them over several months, I realized that this party is like the old Labor principles and values that I was so desperately seeking, but even better. These guys have been so consistent. A lot of people don't know about them because they, instead of running election campaigns to get into Parliament, they were diverting most of their resources into doing nitty-gritty research and getting all of their facts right. It was after COVID in Gaza that they said, we are going to now run campaigns to get our members elected into Parliament and start to make a difference from the inside. I support their vision. People say, well, you joined them recently, but you didn't know about them. I say, well, until recently, but they've been around for 37 years. And I think people should make up their own minds, not read just the silly Wikipedia page, but actually go to the website and read their policies.